It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. At the 5th Ministerial Deregulation meeting, President Park Geun-hye introduced deregulation policies that she believes will effectively aid new growth engines. The Korean government lifts regulations on the ICT convergence sector to keep up with developed countries, meaning that unmanned aerial vehicles or drones will be allowed to do anything that doesn't interfere with military operations or pose a threat to the public. A number of lawmakers, including the Prime Minister, were in Gwangju to attend a commemorative ceremony for the May 18th Democratic Movement, as a reminder that the event laid the foundation for a more free and just society. The 5th Ministerial meeting on deregulation, attended by the President, cabinet members, ordinary citizens, and business leaders, was held earlier today. The Park Geun-hye administration announced a package of deregulation policies aimed at fostering future growth engines. Song Ji-sun has our top story.
Groundbreaking, innovative policies. That's how President Park Geun-hye described her goals for reforming the regulations hindering new growth engines at the 5th Ministerial Deregulation meeting on Friday at the presidential office.
규제 개혁이야말로 돈 안 들이고도 민간의 창의와 투자를 극대화하고 사안별로 맞춤형 해결이 가능한 일석삼조의 효과를 가진 가장 효과적인 대책입니다. 특히 신산업 성장을 가로막는 핵심적인 규제들은 선제적이고 과감하게 철폐해야만 우리 경제가 한 단계 더 도약할 수가 있습니다.
The Park administration has continuously pledged to remove as many regulations as possible, with the exception of those deemed absolutely necessary. To ensure Korea does not lag behind in the global market, the administration will lower the barriers for new industries to levels similar to those in most advanced countries. Developing drones and road testing autonomous vehicles will now become much easier. The government will also take preemptive deregulatory measures to boost economic sentiment and improve the synergy between the regional and central governments to better reflect demand from the field. With nearly 300 deregulatory tasks submitted by businesses expected to be addressed over the next 2 months, the government expects to save some $3 billion and create 13,000 new jobs in the process. President Park stressed that timing and speed are key to reform drives, as there can be no new growth engines and no job creation without deregulation. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Let's dig a little deeper into the government's deregulatory drive for new industries and the ICT sector. According to our Kim Ji-yeon, various sectors, including the drone industry, may welcome these new changes.
The government is planning to eliminate regulations on goods and services related to the ICT convergence sector to match the level of freedom in developed countries. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport says autonomous vehicles will be able to operate anywhere across the nation on roads designated for testing and demonstration. Also, it will apply a negative listing approach to drones for commercial use, meaning it will allow the use of drones that don't interfere with military operations or that could pose a risk to public safety.
Already, developed countries have decisively jumped into the drone industry and have acquired a lot of the technology, so we have to speed up innovation in this field too.
In the Internet of Things sector, the ICT Ministry agreed to allow a higher output of electromagnetic frequencies by 20 times the current level to 200 milliwatts. The ministry says the changes will lower costs for companies by a third and help them build exclusive IoT network connectivity. By June, the ICT Ministry says it will come up with clear guidelines in cooperation with the Interior Ministry, the Korea Communications Commission, and the Financial Services Commission on how big data companies should handle personal information. The new guidelines will no longer require companies to get an individual's approval for the collection of personal information, but they are expected to impose higher security standards on the companies with regard to how they should handle and store the data. The ICT Ministry also says it's upgrading its public database to help companies providing offline services online, starting with the National Police Agency's database on driver's licenses of chauffeurs. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
On May 18, 1980, Gwangju, Korea, ordinary citizens gave their lives to stand up and speak up against a dictatorial government. Ji Myung-gil takes us to the southwestern city where special ceremonies were held to honor those who laid a solid foundation for the democratic nation Korea has become today.
Speaking at the ceremony in Gwangju, Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn said the May 18th democratic movement marked a watershed in Korea's democratic development that paved the way for a more free and just society. He added that Korea has struggled to establish a free and righteous nation under the democracy built on the spirit of the May 18th movement. He also offered condolences to the victims' families. During the ceremony, a choir performed the signature song March for the Beloved, and participants were free to sing along as the spirit moved them. Leaders of the ruling and opposition parties joined in singing the song, while the Prime Minister remained silent. The signature song, popular with student activists in the 1980s, was sung by all participants at the ceremony starting in 1997. But since 2009, it has been performed by a choir following a decision by the conservative Lee Myung-bak administration. The practice has continued to this day despite calls from the opposition parties to make the singing of the song compulsory again. They say that to do otherwise damages the spirit of the democracy movement. Reflecting the controversy, the Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, Park Seung-chun, was blocked from attending the event by relatives of people killed in the democracy movement. The ceremony was attended by roughly 3,000 people in all, including government officials, the families of democratic movement victims, and students. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
As this is the 36th anniversary of that pro-democracy movement, we maintain our focus on the historic event. Shinsegae highlights the significance of this day by listing what unfolded on May 18, 1980 in Gwangju.
It's a day remembered nationwide. For some, it evokes bitter memories. For others, honor. Marking the pro-democracy movement that took place on this day 36 years ago, most people are reflecting and reminiscing on the historic event that altered the political and social landscape of Korea. In 1980, public opposition to martial law led student activists in Gwangju to carry out a string of demonstrations, which triggered a clash with the military forces deployed by the authoritarian Chun Doo-hwan regime. This pro-democracy movement took root, making Gwangju the symbolic center for civic action, and now May 18th is widely remembered as the day that gave birth to democracy in a struggling nation.
It was worth the sacrifice. But to think that my friends and brothers are laid here, it's hard every time I come.
Visitors share one voice on this day, designated as a national day of commemoration in 1997 to sustain Korea's democracy and help move it in the right direction to ensure these sacrifices were not in vain.
Here at the Bangwol-dong Memorial Cemetery, where the martyrs of the Gwangju pro-democracy movement are laid to rest, visitors create a stone tower to honor the spirits of those who have given their lives for the democracy of the nation.
The building of the tower was once stalled for more than 2 decades, but resumed with public support and continues to take shape. And now, not only does it represent community, but also the united struggle and the spirit of democracy that Korea continues to benefit from today. With every stone added, the contributions of those who gave their lives are remembered, and the spirit of the movement is carried on to build a better nation. Shinsegae, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Shifting our focus to present-day events, amid global concerns that North Korea could conduct its 5th nuclear test ahead of the historic Party Congress, the communist state did not press the button, neither before nor during the convention. But Seoul says the Korean peninsula is at a point where chances of another nuke test by the North cannot and should not be ruled out. Connie Kim fills us in on the need for stronger measures against the reckless regime.
The current situation on the Korean peninsula is at a critical point where North Korea could push for a fifth nuclear test at any time. That's according to South Korea's Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo during a conference in Seoul, who called for strong and stern response measures to induce change from North Korea. The minister also said Seoul had decided to impose stronger sanctions to Pyongyang's evolved provocations, mentioning how the North launched a long-range ballistic missile, while the international community was discussing sanctions for its fourth nuclear test in January. South Korea isn't the only one keeping close watch on North Korea's nuclear threats. World leaders will also take up the issue at the G7 summit in Japan next week. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said the U.S. is confident North Korea's provocations will be addressed as the regime's destabilizing activities are a common cause of concern. Earnest emphasized Washington's continuous cooperation with the international community until the North is prepared to denuclearize and stop engaging in its provocative acts. Cooperation to respond against Pyongyang's nuclear provocations was also emphasized by U.S. Pacific Commander Admiral Harry Harris, who underscored the importance of trilateral military cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Speaking at a security seminar in Washington on Tuesday, Harris said the North is posing a real threat with its pursuit of nuclear weapons and hundreds of thousands of rockets directed toward Seoul. To better respond to North Korea's growing missile threats, the three nations will conduct their first joint missile tracking exercise in Hawaii next month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Donald Trump says he is willing to speak with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to stop the communist state's nuclear program. That's a change in tone by the presidential candidate. But is it something South Korea should take seriously? Kwon So-ah takes a closer look.
Picture Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in the same room, thrashing out their differences. It might be difficult to imagine now, but it might happen if the presumptive Republican presidential nominee wins the White House in the fall. In an interview with Reuters, Trump expressed a willingness to talk with Kim if it would help get the regime to denuclearize. Trump said, quote, "I would speak to him. I would have no problem speaking to him." A different tone from his previous remarks about the North Korean leader when he called Kim a maniac and madman. It's also far from the Obama administration and South Korea's position that denuclearization must come before dialogue. So far, no incumbent U.S. president has had a one-on-one with their North Korean counterpart. Trump refused to elaborate on his specific North Korea policies, but said he would pressure China to help him find a way to deal with the regime. Many experts say Trump is in the middle of formulating his diplomatic policies, which once seemed to be focused solely on America's interests.
I think his foreign policy platform, along with his policy towards the Korean Peninsula, has not been finalized. So I think we have to wait and see how his platform in foreign policy is finalized and determined pretty much by the time the Democratic and the Republican Party convention is held at the end of July.
That's why experts say it is necessary to follow Trump's statements closely, but that it's not time to take him too seriously yet. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Turning our focus to last-ditch efforts by Korea's number 2 shipper Hyundai Merchant Marine. It's in negotiations with foreign ship owners to work out a charter fee reduction in an attempt to stave off bankruptcy. The company is looking for a 30% cut to drastically reduce costs. Kwon Jang-ho reports.
It's a negotiation that could make or break the future of Korea's second-largest shipping company. Hyundai Merchant Marine is meeting with 5 foreign ship owners in Seoul on Wednesday to ask for a reduction in charter rates as it tries to dig itself out of a mounting debt crisis. Hyundai recorded a loss over $200 million last year alone, and in a deal made with its creditors last month, it promised it would renegotiate its charter fees with foreign ship owners in order to stave off bankruptcy. Hyundai has a total of 116 ships, 83 of which have been leased from foreign ship owners at a cost of $830 million. It's looking to receive a 28% reduction in charter rates, which would help cover a large chunk of its recurring annual losses. Agreeing to a reduction could be considered the best option for the ship owners as well.
If they were to take back the chartered ships due to recent difficulties in the shipping economy and slowdown in global trade, those ships could end up not being used at all. So rather than having that big waste, they might be open to renegotiating the current contracts.
Being so heavily dependent on chartered ships, Hyundai Marine may have to enter court receivership or face bankruptcy if the current negotiations do not go through. That's why it's said to be looking to sweeten the deal by offering shares to make up for a cut in charter rates. A tentative deadline for negotiations are set for Friday, and Hyundai is hoping to at least come out of it with a verbal agreement. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, Shinsegae has become the latest retail giant to join the city duty-free store lineup, showcasing some 600 brands, including numerous high-end designer labels. The new duty-free store is located within Shinsegae department store, nestled in the shopping district of Myeongdong in Seoul. Shinsegae aims to post sales of roughly $1.3 billion this year. The retail giant entered the lucrative duty-free market back in 2012, opening a store in the southern port city of Busan. It currently operates stores in Busan's Gimhae International Airport, as well as the nation's main gateway, Incheon International Airport. With Tucson also scheduled to open a duty-free store in Seoul later this week, it's expected to intensify the already heated competition. That brings us to the end of this hour's newscast. As always, thank you for watching.